Hello and welcome, star people, to another illuminating episode of the Outlaw Astrology Podcast. I'm your intrepid star guide APM, and today we're continuing our archetypal journey through the zodiac with Virgo, the sacred healer. And before we immerse ourselves in Virgo's discerning wisdom, a quick reminder to subscribe and rate, give us 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts, because it helps us reach more seekers. And visit our Substack for deeper dives into the cosmos with the stars. And now let's explore Virgo's meticulous energy and how it teaches us to heal through wholeness rather than impossible perfection. Alrighty, so we're going to step into the art of sacred discernment. And so in the hero's journey, and this is how I am conceptualizing this, that the walk through the zodiac can also be seen as a hero's journey. And I am thinking about Joseph Campbell and his Hero with 1,000 Faces body of work, because he popularized it by noticing this theme in quite a few myths and legends and in folklore all over the world. And he taught this to his students, and then eventually it became a documentary series, which I did have the pleasure of viewing. And so we're looking at a crucial phase where raw talent must be refined through dedicated practice and discernment. And so Virgo represents the sacred refining process. It's the patient cultivation of skill through attention to detail. And a card that I love tarot, I have several decks. The card I'm thinking of in particular is the 7 of Pentacles. And it's that pause. You'll notice it is a card where there is a figure on it, and there are 7 pentacles looking as if they'd been planted in the earth, and they're standing there with a garden implement, looking at their harvest and being patient and contemplating what they could do, waiting for results. It's that sort of patience and that sort of attention to detail. So, like Mercury's analytical expression, we learn to separate wheat from chaff in our own consciousness. And at the recording of this particular episode, we have just entered into Virgo season. And it is top of my mind, discernment. As a matter of fact, I have a lot of Virgo in my chart. I have quite a few placements there. And so discernment is a very important lesson for me. Now, having come from Leo learning to shine that light, because the sun is about shining your light. It's about illuminating darkness. That's what it does. So your consciousness and consciousness. So the consciousness, in illuminating darkness by house and by sign will give you an idea of what needs lighting up in a chart. Now, we're not going into the sun specifically. We're talking about Leo energy. It's just that sun is a corresponding energy to Leo energy. It's about being authentic in our self-expression, finding a peace and a home within our own self, our own spirit, our own body, our own mind, our own emotions, our own heart, etc., our own soul. And so we live in a late-stage capitalistic society, and we must question what humble service means, because usually you're going to see Virgo as humble service. And it begs the question, what is humble? And who must be humble? Because not everybody has to be humble. Certain people must serve, and they must do so in a humble fashion. And so I feel it's necessary to question what humble service truly means. And so one thing about Virgo energy is that it can be martyrdom disguised as virtue. Is it? Is it constant discernment where our gifts create genuine value? That's another question. So the Virgo archetype at its finest and its highest invites us to analyze systems rather than blindly serve them, to ask whether our pursuit of excellence feeds our souls or is merely feeding the machine. And this is the point where we become aware of burnout, of anxiety, of fear. It's not that we won't be aware of these things. It's that now we have to be more discerning about our energy, because we're going to be more aware When we have the sun, Leo energy is about using that energy without burning yourself out, without, shining your light so much that you end up, making things more harmful and worse rather than life-giving. And so that life-giving energy continues with Virgo and its discernment, okay? The sun is shining. How much water, how much nurture, how much care do I need to provide for myself and for others in order for us to have the most beneficial outcomes interconnectedly? And so we're looking at the wounded healer's path. And so Virgo's connection to healing runs deeper than a mere technique. And this comes from the wounded healer archetype. And this archetype is best typified by a myth. And we've all heard it. It's the Chiron myth. And it is the story of someone or a centaur, Chiron, who is a divine being the child of a nymph, depending on the lineage, a nymph and I think Zeus. Or, a major god. I believe Zeus is usually the father in quite a few retellings. And not being accepted by the mother because he didn't fit her idea of what a child should look like or be. And then being given to two gods to mentor and to raise. That would be the twin gods, the goddess of the moon, Artemis, Diana is what that archetype is called in Roman mythology, and Apollo. And the moon and the sun, god and goddess. Okay, and so they were the mentors, they were the ones who raised Chiron. And Chiron best embodies that wounded healer myth because, this is the story, he was wounded by Hercules or Heracles, depending on what lineage we're talking about, with a poisoned arrow, and since he was immortal, and it also did not heal. So it's a wound you have to live with, a wound that it's like a chronic illness, you might say, a chronic illness or challenge that we must constantly face that doesn't heal easily and constantly is very much in the subconscious, but not, it's semi-conscious. You're aware of it, we're aware of it, but it kind of hurts. Everybody has that wound that's not easy to let go of. That wound that is behind, informs, it shapes our experiences in the world. And so the wounded healer archetype is Chiron. And Chiron gets injured by a poisoned arrow during, Hercules playing around with arrows, and it is painful. He is also considered the wisest of the centaurs and is looked at as their leader. This is also wounded healer can be being othered, being treated as a token. Those are also traumas and wounds. It is the black sheep wound. It is the scapegoat wound. That is all part of the Chiron archetype and therefore the wounded healer archetype. Because the wounded healer is usually someone who is dealing with an issue of their own, and they have managed to somehow take that pain, that suffering, those traumatic experiences and turn them into a wisdom that they offer as a healing to the world or to their community. And so it recognizes that imperfection is a doorway to wholeness. That the point isn't perfection itself. Perfection is merely to measure. It's an ideal to measure against. It's not meant to be the destination. And the Virgo shadow manifests as relentless criticism and impossible standards that hurt rather than heal, and sometimes cause in higher amounts of anxiety, because it's not possible for a human being to stop being human. And being human means you're going to make mistakes. You're going to hurt and you're going to be hurt. And the idea that one day we will arrive at a perfect self that is impenetrable and imperious to injury and to pain and to heartbreak and the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, which happens to be human existence currently and has been for several thousand years, it is the idea that we can overstep that, step right over that to this perfectionist, high standard level that will make us imperious to any of that, and it won't happen. We'll transcend it as a matter of course. And so ancient harvest goddesses, for example, as we go on, like Demeter and Ceres, represent not the sterility of perfection, but more of a messy abundance of nature itself. And so those deities tended to know that healing comes from not eliminating flaws, but integrating them to more complete understanding of ourselves, which the Chiron myth illuminates. It shows us that Chiron dealt with that injury, but was a teacher, a mentor of heroes. He taught medicine, magic, all sorts of things. He actually mentored and taught, was the teacher of a great many Greek heroes. It was considered an honor to go to Chiron to learn from him or them. It's considered a great honor. So coming from a place of not being wanted or accepted or considered a burden to his mother and to his father, and then being given mentorship of two great gods of magic and learning and all of that, and healing and fertility. Those are some really good knowledge right there to have access to be able to transcend being different, because all the centaurs, he was even different from them, to being able to transcend being the token centaur amongst gods to a position of mentor, teacher, sage, elder, and healer, taking into account all of his experience, all of his tragedies, and eventually he is unable to take the pain any longer, and he makes a sacrifice, which is a very common trait when you're looking at the Virgo Pisces axis. When you're looking at that, you're also looking at sacrifice, and he makes the ultimate sacrifice in that myth to sacrifice his immortality so that the god, the Titan Prometheus, can be saved from having his, from being attacked by a griffin or an eagle, depending on the lineage and the telling of the story. So he can be delivered from his suffering. Chiron makes a sacrifice to do that, and is then put in the sky as the constellation Centaurus or Sagittarius, as I said, but depending on the telling of the story and depending on the lineage. And so that is the wounded healer's path. We've got Chiron. But we also have Demeter and Ceres, and that's a kind of a messy story. I've told it often, so I'm not going to retell it. But it's a common myth. That is the Persephone myth, where Persephone is taken to the underworld against her will by Hades, the god of the underworld, and eventually her mother has to, restore balance to the world, and has to do so in a way that is messy and scary and frightening, and makes her look like a helicopter parent when in fact she was just protecting her child. And that message. So that message isn't about being perfect. It's not even about doing anything perfect, appearing perfect. It's simply understanding that the walk through life is messy, and discernment and analytical skills, meaning self-assessment and assessing a situation, are all useful skills to have. And the whole point is to not eliminate flaws, but to integrate them into a more comprehensive comprehension. And so mastery isn't really about, true mastery isn't about being perfect. It's not perfection at all. It's not even about knowing everything. It's about embracing that full spectrum of experience with compassion and discernment. And what I'm talking about, we're talking about discernment, is learning to say yes to what is for you and no to what is not. And we look back at Cancer, and we say, okay, my gut is telling me that whilst this experience is perfect and it meets all of my standards, which are high, I feel that in my gut this is not the right choice. Something is missing, something is off, something is wrong, and it is honoring that gut response with compassion and saying, okay, it doesn't mean I'm bad, doesn't mean I'm wrong, doesn't mean the situation's wrong. It just simply means that at this time, this is not right for me. At some other point in my journey, this might be an ideal circumstance, but for this time, this right now, this here, this now, I'm going to have to say pass on this glorious, perfect thing that I thought I wanted. And that is compassion, meaning that I feel what I feel, and discernment, meaning I'm going to take a pass. This is going to be a not for me right now. And that's fine too. That's a beautiful experience when you can decide this is right for me and this is not right for me. And that is a way of understanding ourselves better, because choice, discerning what is right and wrong for us, is also part of the process leading to comprehension. And so Mercury is the planet that is most associated with Virgo energy in addition to Gemini energy, but it's also Virgo energy. And it's the questioning mind. So Mercury has an earth expression and Virgo is that expression. And it teaches us that true devotion requires a questioning mind. So we live in a culture that's obsessed with being productive, we're achieving, and we must interrogate, we must assess our pursuit of mastery itself. Okay, so are we developing these skills to feed our need for validation? Or are we offering something meaningful to ourselves and to our communities? Okay, so the alchemical process that Virgo involves transmuting the criticism into discernment and the need for perfection into more of a presence. So Mercury is offering up the analytical abilities to allow us to see systems, frameworks, etc. clearly rather than becoming unconsciously absorbed by them. Which leads me to wonder, let's look at Brigitte. And Brigitte, and the reason why I'm mentioning this is because Brigitte is one of those earth goddesses, the harvest goddess and healing deity. And Brigitte comes from the Celtic, and this is a triple goddess that governed healing, poetry, smithcraft, etc. And it shows how creation and healing are interconnected processes. And so she is both a solar deity and a goddess of sacred wells. And so Brigitte teaches that healing requires fiery transformation and deep emotional restoration. Okay? And so it's the first day of spring, when those first stirrings start, that Brigitte has her feast day. And it's the medicine of hope after a winter's darkness. And so the reason why I was speaking about that particular goddess, we're talking about healing, and Virgo is associated with healing and improvement. It is seeing a framework, it's seeing what is wrong and saying, you know what, this can be improved to be more efficient. Whilst once upon a time this may have worked, right now it's becoming more problem and more harmful than it is beneficial. What can we change? What's missing? What's working? What isn't working? How can we start this process? And those questions, that questioning mind, is what starts that process of discernment. Okay, what works, what doesn't work? What can we keep and what can we let go of? What do we need? What do we want? And how can we integrate those to what appear to be opposites? Because sometimes what you need and what you want do not have a neat middle point that we can all gravitate to. Sometimes we have to dance with the opposites in order to find a third, more beneficial thing, more holistic, combines our needs and our wants in a way that's not always neat. It is messy, but finding a way to integrate the two so that we can get both sets of needs met. And that requires a questioning mind, represented by our Mercury, but it also requires us to be honest about ourselves. And honesty with ourselves is sometimes a challenge. We are human beings. We want what we want. We need what we need. And sometimes we're willing to tell ourselves a story, which archetypes help with, tell ourselves a story in which we ignore certain things in order to get what we want. Or we pretend like we don't know something in order to make what we want more palatable when we really should be saying no. Discernment is a gift, but it is like learning to use a scalpel or a laser. It requires practice and it requires patience. I point you back to the Seven of Pentacles. If you have card decks and are into that, is a way to contemplate that energy and have it close. Sometimes devotion and patience go hand in hand. Sometimes the integration process, while it's messy, it does require, and creation does require us to be patient, does require us to be discerning, and it also requires us to lower our standards, or at least be more fluid with them for the time being as we explore. And so when we're looking at Mercury, we're looking at turning criticism discernment. We're looking at perfectionism into presence, because Mercury is all about allowing us to see systems clearly rather than being absorbed. So this energy this questioning energy that Mercury provides us with helps us to distinguish between the authentic service, meaning helping people. That's what service is. It's helping people. I don't typically, and that's, I should point this out, I don't typically like paeans to service, because I feel that they're very broad, very general, and far too capitalistic and productivity-oriented, meaning grind and hustle culture-oriented, and it doesn't take into account nuance, energy levels, levels of ability, because that is, all those things that I've mentioned are going to be very fluid and very slippery, and it needs to be taken into account. So if we're going to be helping, we need to be doing so when our cup is filled, rather than when it's half empty, okay? And so we want to make certain that we're not exploiting. The exploitation isn't masquerading as paying one's dues, because that's another thing. Paying one's dues can also be, exploitation, as opposed to, is this right for me? Because Virgo energy can be summed up, if we want to do it simply, it's this, not that. It's these experiences, not that experience. It's these people, not those people. Now, that may appear dichotomous. It may appear that way, because at the end of the day, the word decision comes from a Latin word which means to cut. Because if you're going to make a choice, you're automatically going to have to sacrifice the other option in order to make a choice. So sometimes you can have both things. It's a both and. There are times when that is true, but there are also times when you make a choice that it's this and not that. You immediately sacrifice that as an option. That part suddenly goes away. It's no longer an option. And it must be chosen from the deepest part within us all, and it must be authentic, an authentic desire to help, rather than any ideas of pay your dues, which is exploitative in capitalist structures. And also from a place with a full cup where we can give freely without depleting ourselves, because Virgo energy is also discerning for a reason. It's that it is the understanding that resources are finite. And we need to know when to use our resources in ways that will help us and others, not us or others or us. It is both and. That's what I mean. When I say both and, I mean we can help others and help ourselves. We can do good for ourselves and others. It doesn't have to be a choice where others win and we're burnt out. That is not sustainable. It is not scalable. It is not healthy. And that is why Virgo energy is rituals, patterns on the daily, the habits that the discernment, because habits are born of discernment. Those habits that we have on the daily are meant to support our life. And that means having Mercury's questioning mind allows us to discern, yep, this is definitely, I would prefer this, and being able to own that, embody that, step into that, and step into it fully and be committed. And so the sacred healer recognizes that true healing must address both individual symptoms and the systemic causes of suffering. It cannot be an either or thing. It must be both. And let's see if I have time to share. Air is a Norse goddess, one of the Valkyries, and the goddess of healing. And the name means help or mercy. That's another theme that I don't see often explained or put alongside Virgo energy. It is help, but it's also mercy. It is this particular goddess, one of the Valkyries, was, and I'm not even certain I'm pronouncing that correctly, so I'm just going to be honest. It's spelled E-I-R, it's Norse, and they possess the knowledge of medicinal herbs and healing magic. And so this goddess represents the healer who stands between life and death. It's offering assistance and comfort to those in need whilst understanding the necessity for the curative and palliative approaches to suffering. Meaning you recognize suffering, you offer assistance, but it's also done in a way that's sustaining. Meaning that the healer must also be sustained and kept healthy if the community is going to be healthy. Okay? I really do like that myth. Ooh, yummy, yummy, yummy. And one last one, I'm going to mention Isis one more time. And Isis, Egyptian, primarily known as a mother goddess, but Isis is also a powerful healer who restored her husband Osiris to life after gathering his parts, which had been cast asunder by Set, by Osiris' brother Set. And so she represents the healer's ability to see wholeness where others only see fragments. That's another Virgo energy. In addition to help, in addition to mercy, there is also the ability to see wholeness where others only see bits and pieces, to see the big picture where others only see puzzle pieces. Okay, so her magic combines the practical knowledge of herbs and rituals with profound spiritual wisdom about integration. So it's integrating as well. So we've got, as the wounded healer, we also have help, we have mercy, we have being able to see a whole where others only see fragments. We also see the both and. I can help you without losing sight of me. Okay, because Virgo energy is also the Virgin. Now, once upon a time, the Virgin did not have anything to do with being chaste. The Virgin actually comes from the archetype which stands for being whole within oneself. Meaning that one does not need excessive amounts of external validation, that one can look to oneself for resources within to fortify oneself in the world, to feed oneself, to keep oneself healthy, to keep oneself well filled, so that when others require assistance, when they need help, when they need mercy, you are able to give from a place of being able to share freely without feeling depleted, without feeling like you're giving away what you do not have, and it comes from a much different place and a much different energy. And it is one of many different approaches to dealing with suffering, which is what Virgo energy also is dealing with, is how to hold a space for those in need, those in pain, those who are suffering, to hold space for that at the same time whilst we integrate that knowledge on the road, on the process, on the journey to creating a more equitable, more ethical, more humane world where every being, not just human beings, can thrive. Okay, and as we complete our journey with Virgo, it's wise to remember that healing never comes through perfectionism. It comes through wholeness. It is the integration of parts of which Virgo wisdom is here to embody, to show us, to lead us, to be the role model of. And that includes those we judge as flawed or broken, including ourselves. And so the key takeaway here is our capacity for discernment is a sacred gift. It is like a scalpel. It's not meant to be used for harsh judgment, but to foreseeing clearly what serves genuine healing in ourselves, our communities, and our world. Okay? So, if this episode resonates with you, I invite you to practice one act of discerning service this week or help. That is something that honors both your skills, your boundaries, your talents, honors your energy, and also honors the energy of other people. Okay? So, until next time, until our next cosmic exploration, may you find wisdom in your wounds and strength in your sensitivity. This has been APM. This is the Outlaw Astrology Podcast, where we don't just interpret the stars, we embody their wisdom. So, heal and reveal, star people, peace, and astro magic.